Well, hello. It's another episode of MMA Sucks, the show that's not afraid to go full retard. I am your host, James Benton. As always, my right hand man, Johnny Irish. And today we have a very special guest, a staple of St. Louis MMA. If you were to build a Mount Rushmore of MMA for St. Louis MMA, this man's face would be right up there. We have the one and only Red Nose Steve Berger. Um, we have a lot of interesting things to talk about. We have like to go over what it's like to fight at the highest levels, what it's like to run a gym, and really mostly let's break out some of the old stories of dojo storming back in the late '90s and what it was like to be a fighter back then. So I guess first thing I just like to say thanks for coming up on the show and yeah, donating a little bit of time to the cause. And throw a quick shout out. The shirt that I'm wearing today is you can see it says mustache beatdowns, 5 cents. It's gentleman Joe Mueller, one of the Muay Thai fighters, he's a three-time national champion, getting ready to do worlds and hopefully turn pro. He's a wonderful Muay Thai fighter out of this area, and we don't have a lot of guys making it big on the Muay Thai scene in the St. Louis or even really generally in the Midwest. It's really like if you're from New York or one of those major areas, and Joe's really doing it. He's got a lot of potential. So just want to throw a quick shout out to him.
I believe he has extra shirts too. He has for sale, doesn't he?
Yeah. If you guys are wanting to help support the cause, he's selling these shirts to help pay for his trip to Worlds and try to get there and represent for the Midwest, man.
They're great shirts. I have one, and I think I got a few more sold for them too from just wearing them out. People love those shirts, and they're not the baggy, crappy band T-shirts of yesteryear that most fighters wear and make. They're really good shirts, actually.
Yeah, totally. All right, well let's get right into it. So Steve is running his own gym in it's Fighter Fit out of Valley Park area. Right now, how long have you been at that location?
I guess we've been there a year and a half now.
Year and a half. Student
So
enrollment's going good. They finally he stopped trying to worry so much about all you sweaty, smelly fighters, and he built a nice little dungeon to hide you guys away. So it's a family martial arts place first and foremost. You guys walk through the door, and anybody who's listening, obviously, it's nothing but sweaty fighters listening. But if you walk through, it's very clean, very nice. It's a family operation. Steve runs it with his family. His wife, as you can obviously, she's been a godsend and really helps
many
Steve do a great
ways,
job there.
yes, yes, in many ways, and it was her idea. You guys all know I had the gym where all the meatheads were, and we'd just throw each other around, and people would walk in and see us throwing each other around, and I'd be there trying to tell them, hey, look, we also offer cardio and kids classes and this and that, and sometimes they'd leave skid marks in the parking lot as they were running away. So, it's kind of one of those things where Carly said, look, we're going to do this. Let's get an upper level, and we'll have something that looks a little nicer, a little more friendly, and we'll have all the women's classes and the kids classes up there, and then in the basement, you and the grapplers can throw each other around and stuff. So that's the way we do it. Keep the animals downstairs.
Yeah, keep them out. Yeah, it's certainly yeah. Keep them out of sight. Keep the pit bulls hidden.
That's right.
Uh, so let's just get right into your career. When did you have your first fight? What year was that?
I believe it was 98 was when I had my first fight, my first pro fight. Either it was 98 or 99. And I even forget the guy's name, Brian something or other, who I
Oh,
fought over on Brian Madden's legendary SFC card. And yeah, I won by armbar about 7 minutes into it, armbar from the mount, about 7 minutes into it. Long time ago.
Was
so
this in
what?
like a bowling alley or a barn, or where was this at?
No, actually, Brian Madden, I had to take my hat off to that guy. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. He passed away, but man, he knew how to throw a fight show. He came up with the SFC. He rented out. He was the first to rent out the Collinsville Convention Center and put MMA in there, and that's where I had my first pro fight. Jermaine Andre had his. Jason Reinhardt. On and on. Mike Rogers, plenty of big name fighters had their first pro fights on his card.
Yes. So can you tell us a little bit about the psychology of what it was like to walk out there? It's like obviously now we have such a developed amateur scene, and the sport's really popular. And obviously you had seen fights on TV, you'd been to fights, so you knew what you were getting into. But standing out there or standing in the back, warming up, getting ready, what was it like to go out for your first fight?
You know. You're alive, I mean, the blood's racing, and your arms are feeling weak, your stomach's turning, and it's there's no mistake. In that moment, you're alive, and that's what I tell all my fighters before the fight. It's a moment in time, and it's how you deal with that moment that's going to decide everything. If you let that moment control you, you're going to break down. You're going to lose the fight, and then you're going to walk out of that cage with all kinds of regrets, wishing, why the hell didn't I just control it? Why didn't I just do what I do in the gym? But if you can get control of that moment, like my dad used to always tell me, son, when you fight, you have to beat two people. You have to beat yourself, and you have to beat the opponent. So in yourself, that's the tougher of the two. You get control of yourself, the opponent's not that bad. As soon as you start letting yourself beat you down, that's it, man. Show's over.
We've seen a lot of fighters freeze up. Have you ever had that happen in your career? I mean, me and you've seen it. It's happened to me. You ever been out there and you just went out there and didn't show up that day?
Yeah, it's happened to me. It's funny, when I started out in the beginning of my career, I'd say the first 3 years, 4 years, I mean, I felt like I was an animal. When I came to fight, I came to fight. As soon as I started to get a little more established, and as soon as I started to get more of a name, all of a sudden, when I came to fight, I was too worried about what happens if I lose. Whereas if you went back to when I first started fighting, that never even entered my mind, and that it's something I sit and I look back and I think about those moments, and I realize that those type moments are part of the reasons why I started losing fights and going downhill. And that's why I'm always telling Dan and all my other fighters, hey, capitalize on this moment. Believe in yourself. Make sure, because the big difference between the practice room and the fight is whenever we're all friends in the practice room. Everybody's grappled with each other. Everybody knows the other guy. There's no nerves. But as soon as you get out there and all of a sudden you're grappling this guy who you don't know, you've never rolled with before, but you've heard, oh, he's good, or you've seen, oh, he's good, and now you got a bunch of people out there who are watching who you've never seen before. All of a sudden you start building this guy up into some King Kong in your head. And that can start tearing you down, because that's when you start walking out there and you don't perform like you do in the practice room.
So is that where the legendary Steve Berger speech right before we walk out every time came from?
Yeah, pretty much. My own self tear downs. There was plenty of times whenever I was in there and I'd build this guy up to be some kind of monster, and then I'd leave and I'd think, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? But that's it. When it's done, it's done. No matter how much you cry about it, no matter how much you think, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? You never get that moment back. Mm-hmm. It's why it's just very important for every fighter to make sure when you go out there, you leave that cage with no regrets.
Yeah, the psychology of the sport is one of the hardest aspects to deal with. It's the and people don't really understand it. It's so frustrating. Sometimes you see some kids just naturally come by it. They're ready to go out there and fight, and you see it a lot where guys train so hard and they're so gifted and they should be good, and it's the mental edge that holds them back, and so their response is simply, oh, I got to train harder, I got to do more, and it's unfortunate because you see, one of the worst things to see is to see a better fighter lose because he's beaten himself. The
Yeah.
let's fast forward. So you really got at it quickly as far as your career was concerned. Within three pro fights, you took on Jeremy Horn, who at that point had, I mean, what was he? Something like 27-2 or 27-1 or something like that. I mean, if these young fighters could just understand what that's like, you haven't had any amateur fights. You went right out of the gate. You turned pro, and with 3 fights, you're fighting a guy who is got at least 30 documented fights, and the truth is it's probably closer to 50 or 60 because he had he had a ton of undocumented fights coming out of that Iowa scene. What was it like preparing for that fight and just mentally getting ready to walk out? I mean, where was your head at?
Like I was saying before, back then I was a bull, and it didn't matter to me. I think that was like I fought Jeremy 6 months after he fought Frank Shamrock, and obviously I was training with Rodrigo at the time, and Jeremy weighed like 217 pounds. I weighed 189 pounds. That's how different it was back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 1 10-minute round, and Rodrigo said, "Listen, we'll take this fight, but we want to make sure that, if neither guy finishes the other, then, we're going to make it a draw." Rodrigo knew I was tough to finish, and he wanted to make sure that we got that. So Brian Madden, the SFC promoter, said, okay, whether he ever told Jeremy about that, I don't know, because there ended up being a lot of dispute. The fight actually, we did a couple of overtime rounds, and Jeremy ended up saying, hey, I'm fighting again tomorrow night. I'm done. Let's let it go to the cards. Had it went to a fair decision, Jeremy would have won, but we had that thing, so the promoter announced it's a draw, and now, if you look on my record, it says a loss. I think after 4 or 5 years, Monty Cox got it overturned. So.
Yeah, but I mean that was the agreement you came up to, and yeah, again, he probably didn't inform Jeremy about that. But again, if a guy, okay, it's my third or fourth fight, and I'm giving up 35 pounds, I mean, come on, and at that time, that that might seem a little weird for most people, but at that time, when that was common practice in Japan and in Brazil, and they would do things like that. That was a common thing that would be set up and done. So, but still, like, I mean, you were just like, when you came out there, you just knew that he wasn't going to finish you, and that you were just going to keep going no matter what, and you were just going to keep going until you found a way to win the fight. I mean, is that just where your head was at the whole time?
Well, I didn't know he wasn't going to finish. I didn't know he wasn't going to finish me, but I knew I was very tough to finish, and I knew that I was a pretty good jiu-jitsu player, and I was very confident. I was quite a brawler, so I was just very confident in my skills, and thinking all the way back, I just know my mindset back then, and it was like, if you're gonna finish me, let's see, So.
So going back to some of your fights, we're starting off at the beginning. What were some of the harder fights for you to take on, Leah? I mean, Jeremy Horn still is one of the legends of the sport, and choked out Chuck Liddell, and I mean the guy's fought everybody. That fight, everything after that should have been, I mean, in my eyes, should have been a lot easier. But you fought tougher guys since then. Is there any other guys that you would say that were a tougher fight than Jeremy Horn?
As far as tougher fights, I've never had an easy fight, even ones that I've won quick and stuff. For the same reason that when we started this conversation, I mean, you feel like you're going to puke. That question, why do I do this, runs through your head, blah, blah, blah. And you get in there, all of a sudden, as soon as you start making contact, those feelings disappear. You start having fun, and then win or lose, you always got to go back to the drawing boards type deal. I I don't know. As far as like tougher fights, I can't really ever think of one fight that was much tougher than the other. Even when there was ones that I won right away, and ones that lasted 3 rounds, or ones where I got knocked out. I mean, they were all tough. So it's just, for me, it's not, and for every fighter, I think it's not the getting punched or any of that crap that really matters. What always is tough is the psychological, the adrenaline, the stuff going through you beforehand. The getting a hold of yourself, grappling with yourself. And I think you experience that whether you're in the UFC or whether you're about to get in a street fight outside of the bar. I mean, just it hits you.
That's really interesting. Nowadays, we have, like, what we try to do with the amateurs. We try to get them as many jiu-jitsu matches, as many kickboxing matches, as many boxing matches, to really get them very acclimated to competition, and then continue to build up. Maybe have upwards of 20 amateur fights in some cases. All these things to start, to start developing the guys or prepare them. Why was it back then? It seemed like guys were more ready or more acclimated or more mentally prepared to get in the fight. Is it just because there was an older group of guys out there? I mean, guys doing it, like if you were fighting pro, and you were like around 23, 24 years old, that was considered young. Is it just that the guys were older and more mature? Because it seems like people were back then seemed more ready mentally. You didn't have the adrenaline dumps. You'd see guys go out there, and obviously the guys who were in shape, the athletes, the real fighters. I mean, there was there was obviously plenty of guys that were, you guys, what do you guys used to call them, the jersey fighters? They'd have to go out
Yeah.
there and fight. They'd have to fight with a jersey on to cover up their man tits and their big guts and
Sure.
things like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think back then it was a brand new sport, and you had your very, very tough guys. Some of them were wrestlers, some of them were boxers, some of them were street fighters. And hey, there's a fight. It's a lot like today. There's a fight. All right, let's go fight. The difference between back then and today is, today these kids, like Dan will tell you, we got an 8-year-old up at the gym. I mean, this kid's been training since he was 4. He's been wrestling, boxing, doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and the kid's just unbelievable. I mean, at 8 years old, I mean, just something else. So imagine, me, who was a good street fighter, did a little boxing, and then got into Brazilian jiu-jitsu, got good at Brazilian jiu-jitsu at 23, started entering into these octagons. Now imagine this kid who started at 8 years old, mixing everything in. I mean, the level this kid's going to be at by the time he's 23 versus the level I was at, it's going to be two different worlds.
Yeah, for sure. But it seems like the old school guys were more prepared to go out there and could do 30 minutes. It seems like, yeah, obviously we have better training. Guys are much better athletes, much more skilled in a lot of different ways. But like, to go out there and fight 30 minutes, I mean, we see guys who are amateurs with 20 fights that are gassing out in 9 minutes.
Right.
As opposed to where it was like not a big deal. I mean, you weren't even at your premier weight or anything like that. You would weigh 190 pounds and you could go out and fight for 30 minutes. And you were ready
Yeah,
to throw on 3 more, another 30 minutes if that was what was going to take to win.
I think, I always say too, and, you know, I think that you've got your wrestlers, even nowadays with the spiel I just did about everybody training everything together. I think you have somebody who's going to be more of a wrestler, somebody who's going to be more of a jiu-jitsu player, somebody who's going to be more of a striker. And then what I always say too is you've got that guy who's got the X factor. And I really think that I had that X factor. And what I mean is just like I wasn't great at any one, but I was a guy who when I was completely dead tired and shot, I could still, for whatever reason, keep fighting, keep scrapping. I just always had a lot of fight in me. There's quite a few guys out there that I sit and I watch and I see that have that, and those guys really do well. Luke Waltney, there's another guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's great at any one thing, but man, that guy's just got that X factor in him where he can just find some some fight in him no matter what point of the fight's in. Even if he's face down and dead, that kid can just keep fighting. So.
For sure. It's funny because your fight with Jeremy Horn was my first time going. So I want to say that you did turn pro either in early like '98 because it was my first time going. It was right. I remember I got my license like right then. So I had just turned 16, and so that would have been like 1999. It was like one of the first fights that I got to see live. But continuing to go forward, I remember some of the it was funny because I went out to Hickson's second tournament, and it was the same weekend that you fought Aaron Riley, which has gone down in the annals as like the fight of the early 2000s. It's and I remember hearing that because I had a terrible performance out there. I was so depressed and so upset, and and then to find out that Steve lost his fight, it just broke my heart. I think I was like 17, 18, and it was just so hard, and it was so hard, it was really, really upsetting. And then, in hindsight, I look back at it, and it was like that was probably you know, one of the most developmental weekends of my life, learning how to lose and then seeing Steve have this amazing fight. And although he came up on the short end of the decision, debatable, of course, but then just having such an amazing fight that would go on and really just be a not only career defining kind of fight, but also a genre or or a decade defining or like a sport defining fight at that point. At when you got out there with Aaron and you guys started throwing down, was it just that you guys just were so much alike in that like you were ready to sit there and go blow for blow and go the entire time and not back down or not stop, or could you feel while you were doing it that this was something special and that lifted you up more?
I think Rodrigo told me, look, take this kid down, and building up to the fight, I think at that time Aaron had like the highest knockout ratio in MMA at that time. Except for the UFC, but underneath he had like this huge knockout ratio, and was back in the days when you had MMA TV just started and you had those little chat boards. And I remember being on there and everybody saying Aaron's going to knock Steve out and blah, blah, blah. And there was like so many people saying they were going to knock me out. And I was training a lot of boxing. I had boxed a lot and, beforehand, and I was like, no, hey, I'm a good boxer. I'll knock him out. And I remember telling Rodrigo and a few of you guys and stuff, and I remember y'all saying, take him down, take him down. And my foolish pride, I think, made a great fight, but I guess it cost me the decision too. We just stood and banged. I had it in my head I was going to knock him out, and I think I was always a little better jiu-jitsu player than I was boxer. So I you know, wish I'd been smart enough to shoot for a couple more takedowns in that fight.
Yeah,
It's
the
over now.
yeah, but the fight itself was a sport defining moment, and to be honest, I mean, if you take that out of hook and shoot and put it in another venue, it's not so sure that Aaron got the decision on that one. That was a very, very close fight. I mean, I could definitely see, if that fight was done another place. I mean, it was done in his home area in where he was the fan favorite. But that fight was definitely like razor close. I could have definitely seen you getting the decision on that. Yeah, but it would have been nice, especially with the way MMA is scored nowadays. Oh, just throw an extra takedown or two in there, just not even for damage or anything like that, just for the points. But
Right.
but that's not the only amazing fight that you've had that were really defining moments in the sport. You were part of the first fight on free television as well. You and Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
Keep going a couple more years. Uh, Obviously, that was what was it? UFC 37.5, I think is what they ended up calling it. But
7.5. Yeah.
yeah, that was and people don't realize how close that first round was. The first round was a great first round, very very competitive, and then Robbie got the punch in the second one. But that was and I'm sure Dana, or I'm sure the I don't even know who was in leadership. Was Dana White involved at that point, or
You kind of broke up on me
oh,
there, brother. Say
is
it again.
was Dana White involved at that point?
Yeah, Dana was in on that point, and so was Joe Silva. They were both in on the fight and stuff. And I got that fight. I got called. I was sitting on a roof, and I got called like 3 weeks before the fight, and they said, "Hey, you want to fight Robbie Lawler?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And next thing I know, I was like, "Man, I better get to the gym." I hadn't been training; had just been roofing and a whole bit. And I went out and I fought the fight and had a good first round, like you said. But second round, I was a little tired, and he just caught me with that looping right hook, dropped me, and he made short work of me after that.
So, right when you started, I mean, it's been so long ago that you started fighting. Did you actually view it as a sport, or you just viewing it as fighting and for fun? Or, I mean, it's still viewed by a lot of people as not being a real sport.
You
So,
know, I think it's sport in its purest form. You know, anytime I hear somebody say, "Oh, that's not a sport," well, go back to the very first Olympics and see what they did. They very first Olympic Games, they ran and then they wrestled, they boxed, and they did their pancration, which was the fighting. Yeah, those were the sports. It's God throws you on the earth. You got two arms, two legs. He doesn't attach a basketball or a soccer ball to you, So if you're going to do sports, you can run or you can grapple. That's you can box, you can fight. Those are like I said, sport in its purest form, in my opinion.
Yeah, very, very true. Last time I checked, playing basketball might have made somebody's life better, but it never made them a better person. Getting your ass kicked, learning how to kick somebody's ass will further your life and make you a more complete human being, more so than any ball-based sport could ever do.
You just
Uh,
hit the nail on the head there, and that's why I think it's very important. Like, I think every young man should learn how to defend himself, whether it be Brazilian jiu-jitsu or boxing or wrestling or whatever. Why? Because even though it is a team sport, you do train with a team. When you step out there on the mats, or when you step in that boxing ring, or when you step in that cage, it's you. It teaches you how to rely on yourself. It teaches you how to build character. And by building character, you're either learning how to deal with a loss or you're learning how to deal with a win.
Well, obviously those defend or having the ability to defend yourself is crucial for for growing up or even being able to interact in the St. Louis nightlife. Um, do you have any interesting fight related stories that you would have to use your skill and in obviously outside the sport arena inside of in a street fight scenario? Do you have any interesting stories that you could throw our way?
Oh man, I had so many street fights. I don't know if I want to be sitting there throwing them all your way. Those are days that I want to kind of try and forget.
Okay, well we could go on to a little bit more of some of the fun ones. One that I just tickles me to think about. So there, when you guys were over originally at the academy was Universal Martial Arts, and it was over off of Manchester. Luciano had not yet been deported for banging 16-year-olds. Um, so there was the old Hapkido instructor that shared space with Rodrigo. I guess he was married, and they were having an affair with like a 16-year-old cheerleader. And it came out there was this big thing on the Riverfront Times about it, and all this hilarious. And so he ends up getting.
Sad but true, yes.
But he was a very interesting guy. So there was another academy. I guess what is it, the Missouri Academy of Ninjutsu or whatever it was. And they, I guess, were talking kind of some shit and things like that. And you guys decided to go over there and have challenge matches with them. Can you tell us anything about that, or would that be a little bit a conversation you wouldn't want to have, or could you tell us that?
No. I mean, you're doing a good job. Fill me in. You
Okay.
know me. I forget everything.
Yeah.
Come on,
Okay.
Steve.
So the story as I heard it was these guys had talked about, okay, yeah, but we train for real life scenarios, and I guess Rodrigo had gotten word of it, and I think it was he brought you, was it you, Todd, Brian, and Mike? Is that who he ended up bringing over there?
Yeah, I think this one might have been me and Mike. I'm gonna keep
Oh, it was just Mike, yeah.
going. Might have just been me and Mike.
Just been me and Mike. But so Luciano goes over there with you guys, and so does Rodrigo, and you guys go to do the old school dojo storm. But Luciano is in a trench coat, and everybody's like, "What the fuck are you in a trench coat for?" And apparently, didn't he have a gun underneath the trench coat because they're ninjas and they've got swords and shit? That's the story that I heard. I don't know if that's it's certainly funny when I tell it that way, but is that a true fact of the story?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so he was carrying a shotgun underneath the trench coat.
That sounds familiar. I can't remember it tremendously, but knowing Luciano, I wouldn't doubt it.
So you guys go over there, and they see you coming in. The first thing the instructor does is turn around and run right out of the back of the building, and he left. And he left his guys there, and so and Rodrigo's very aggressive, overbearing manners, like, "Oh, you guys want to talk shit? Okay, we're gonna have fights right now." And so I guess they line everybody up, and they have them fight, and of course it's a quick takedown, mount, couple of punches, and a submission, rear naked choke or armbar or whatever, real quick. Everybody learns their lesson, and the ninjas are like, "Oh, okay, wow, that's crazy, and it's amazing," and all that stuff. So then basically, as it starts going into that legend mode where everybody's telling everybody, the ninjas had said that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champions had flown up from Brazil to challenge them. And that they had fought to about a draw. It was a good fight, but they had fought to a draw, but instead it was actually just two white kids came in, double-legged everybody, and mounted them and punched them and tapped them out.
Yeah, well, I mean, no secret there. We know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will trump ninjutsu any day.
Yeah, as far as if you're going style versus style, at least Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does have an answer for tactics or how to deal with everybody else. Where most styles base their art on fighting that style. So boxers fight boxers. They're not dealing with wrestlers. But
right.
But yeah, good old days.
I do remember one funny story with some guy walked into Rodrigo's, and it was me and Mike there, and a big guy was telling Rodrigo how he knew over 200 submission holds, and he was a champion of this and champion of that. And Rodrigo's like, "Here, why don't you grapple with my two guys?" And he put him to roll with Mike, and Mike tapped him out a number of times, and then the guy was like, "Well, give me the smaller guy, me." And so he put him to roll with me, and I just tapped him out a number of times too. And I remember Rodrigo, use one of your 200 submissions, buddy.
just make it a little bit worse. That was See, that was the days. We didn't. I guess there's a little bit of it today, but
Yeah,
it
well,
was
yeah, that's
great.
right.
It's great because you get those the old school martial artists, and some of them might have been like, really, really tough or whatever, tough guys or athletic guys. They're like, oh, I want to challenge my art against what you guys do, and you just don't get that anymore. You don't get the random Taekwondo guy or random Kempo guy coming in and saying, hey, I want to fight a challenge match with the instructor and this kind of stuff. But it seemed to be like the only time that you guys went to another area seemed to be like that one ninjutsu story, which is just ridiculous. It's really funny just because of the whole fact that they came back with the you guys were Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champions from Brazil that flew up to fight them, and the fact that Luciano had a shotgun. that was really entertaining. But most of the time, people would show up to try to fight you guys. I even when I was there, I remember it happening a few times. Guys would come in, and that poor son of a bitch that pissed Todd off. Yeah, see, he already knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, yeah. So this guy comes in, and I guess he was sitting there on the side talking to a student, and he points out Todd while they're all training, and he's like, "Oh, I could definitely kick that guy's ass. I kick his ass. I kick his ass. I definitely kick his ass." Well,
Big mistake.
Yeah, he fast forward to one Saturday, he comes in to actually roll and train, and meanwhile, this student who was sitting there on the side, of course, just turned around and told everybody. And at that point, Todd was still wound really, really tight. He was really crazy, and still in the Marine Corps. And man, he would get, yeah, I mean, he would fight, he would fight, and so the guy comes back in on a Saturday. Todd's walking up because they had the recruiting station right down a couple of storefronts down, and so he sees the guy there. He runs down and grabs his gi and comes running up and throws it on, makes the guy go with him, and he proceeds to just choke him unconscious, slap him until he wakes back up, and then choke him back out there again. The guy's shooting snot bubbles and spit everywhere, and he's like, "Oh my God, you're killing me! You're killing me!" And this guy's bigger than Todd and everything like that. But it was just kind of, guys would come in and drop challenges and talk shit, and then they get pissed off.
Dan, you would have loved Todd Fox. I used to use one of my very first training partners, and I trained with him forever, like John. And I used to call him. You ever see Platoon?
Uh-huh.
All right, you remember Bunny from Platoon? Just that mean, crazy guy shot the retarded guy on one leg, and Bunny just shoots him. That was Todd. We called him Bunny all the time. I remember you're asking me about street fight stories. I remember I got into a fight down on the landing with some biker, and I was beating the crap out of this guy, and I ended up sticking him in an omoplata, and I come forward, and I've got him in an omoplata, whereas if I go any more forward, it's gonna rip this guy's shoulder off. And I stop because I got a little bit of a heart. Well, Bunny, Todd, doesn't have any heart. Todd grabs both of my lapels of my shirt at the time and starts yanking me forward. Big Mike Rogers, who's got a huge heart, grabs my back and starts yanking me back because he didn't want me to end up tearing this guy off. So it was like Mike and Todd playing tug of war, and this poor guy is on the ground with his shoulder doing this.
Steve threw an omoplata in a street fight.
That's how it was back in those days.
Oh, fuck.
You could just do whatever.
You could get away with that shit when you're 20 years old, man. I tell you what, I don't want to do an omoplata or an armbar or anything that isn't like a nice soft surface. I can't imagine trying to wrestle anybody on that cobblestone down on the landing nowadays, man.
Well, believe me, I didn't take this guy down on purpose. We were throwing punches, and he was a bigger guy than me, and he just ended up wasn't even a solid double leg or anything. He just ended up just
tackled,
hugging me down, tackling me down. So I went to my UMA.
Yeah, nice. There was another one. I guess it was a big old fiasco. You guys, everybody was fighting, and at some point, a guy like like sucker punched Todd or something like that, and then Todd turned around and the guy took off running, and Todd chased him for like a mile and a half or something like that. And when the cops pulled up, Todd was on his arm, like arm barring him and breaking his arm.
Yeah, Todd said that was that same deal. I guess when Todd was trying to pull me forward, his buddy sucker punched Todd, and then the foot race began.
Oh yeah, don't try to outrun Todd.
Right. So Todd tackled him down, snapped the poor guy's arm, let the guy up. The guy gets up and goes running with his arm doing this, and the cops come running up, and Todd's like, "That guy just attacked me," and the cops go chasing that guy down the street. Oh.
Yeah, if you're smart enough to say something like really like you're in control of the situation, you're like, hey, this guy assaulted me, and they're like, oh, okay. And then go about it right there is, I mean, obviously you don't want to stand there. It helps when the other guy starts screaming and ranting and raving and you can, run away at that point because.
Right.
Yeah. So,
my joke it's always been, he was twice my size. I did what I saw on TV. And
well, you can get away with that because I mean you can pass for a minor most of the time. So if you like shaved your face or whatever, you can be like, I don't know, I was walking from a Bible group. I'm 17 years old. This guy attacked me.
It only works once or twice, and the cops are like, "Wait the fuck a minute."
Yeah, they see somebody wearing one of your T-shirts around, and they're like, "Wait a minute." So, yeah. Dan just sent me a message that said, so there was a football player that paid to fight you.
Yeah. This weirdo calls me up. This had to be over 10 years ago. Calls me up and says, "Hey, I noticed that you were a good fighter and this and that, and what I'd like to do. I play football for such and such, and what I'd like to do is come in, and I'd like to pay you $450 to train me all week, and then fight me at the end." And I was like, "You want me to train you?" And then
that doesn't give you much incentive to train him correctly.
Right.
So what you want to do is always extend your arms in the guard, and then if somebody goes to put a triangle on you, basically stick your face on their stomach.
Right. I mean, and like I was telling Dan, I don't know what this guy's deal was, but I mean, hey, it was good money, so I was like, all right, yeah, sure, no problem, So I call Jay D'Amato and asked him if I could use his gym, and he said, yeah, sure, you can use it. So I went down there. This guy shows up, and he's a big guy. And I show him some moves and stuff in Jay's basement. It was during the daytime, nobody's there type deal. And then he's like, "All right, well let's do this grapple boxing that you're talking about." I said, "All right." So we put our stuff on, and I just beat the heck out of the guy and choked him out. I did it like 2 or 3 times, and he was like, "Hey, okay, man, that's good," and he just kind of. I said, "All right, well, you want to learn some stuff?" He's like, "No, that's good." And he slapped the money in my hands and said, "All right, well, I'll call you and I'll be back tomorrow." I was like, "Okay," and that was it. He never called me, never. I never heard from him again. So, like I was telling Dan, I don't know whether he's one of these gay dudes who thought maybe he would just be able to beat me up and then rape me or something or what, but it was a strange ordeal. So.
Yeah, that's kind of where I immediately went with it. I was like, is this guy a pervert or something like that,
Right, yeah. So.
Has that happened where people have like contacted you via, like obviously the internet, everybody's on it nowadays, but there were definitely, it seemed like there's a lot more perverts on there back in the day. Have people contacted you for photos or just anything weird or sketchy like that before?
That's how me and him met.
I've had a couple of weirdos that will sit there and say that, and right away you just delete them, and that's that. But I remember probably 12 years ago or so, like when I was like first in this thing, and I remember I get this phone call from this kid who supposedly has bone cancer, and he said his name was Tim Tyrell. And it was a kid on the phone, like voice wise. That's what I'm talking to as a kid, and he's telling me the story and stuff. And he tells me he's talked to Dwayne back in Ludwig, and computer was nowhere near as advanced as it was now. Like I said, it's kind of that MMA.TV. And so I talked to Dwayne, and Dwayne's like, yeah, I know this kid, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I end up keep talking to this kid. He would call me all the time. And this goes on for like months. Well, obviously, I get invited back for the second time to fight in the UFC. And I tell the UFC about this kid with bone cancer, 16-year-old kid. He said he's got bone cancer, blah, blah, blah. Well, right away, the UFC is like, well, we'll fly him out. We'll fly him out for your fight. So I called this kid and I was like, hey, they're going to fly you out, buddy, and they're going to, set you up and the whole bit. He's like, oh, great, blah, blah, blah. Well, then he calls me a few days later. He's like, Steve, my mom's a crack junkie, and she's on the street, and I guess she died, and I'm not going to be able to go. I'm gonna have to be at her funeral, but can my dad go? I was like, boy, I don't know.
Oh my God.
Call the UFC. So I call the UFC, and they're like, yeah, sure, I guess that's fine, no problem. So my dad ends up, kind of buddying up with this guy, and as this guy shows up, he sounds exactly like this kid with the voice. And right away, I was like, oh, man. So I started doing a little investigating and stuff, and end up there was like one different number in all the months that he had called on the caller ID. And I end up like calling this number, and it was like some mental hospital or something like that. So I immediately, I let him know, hey, I know you're not some 16-year-old kid. I called Dwayne Ludwig. I told Ludwig. Ludwig's like, man, my God, I've been talking to this kid for months. I had no idea, it was just some weirdo. So, yeah, those are the two crazy stories that I've had. The one dude who wanted me to train him and fight him, and then the weirdo who's pretending to be.
That's crazy. Oh my God. That's insane. That's crazy. Wow. Yeah, and I never knew that one. I never knew that one. I'm glad we got to that one. That was awesome. Yeah, so your dad had some pretty amazing things that he did did at the UFC. This is one that yeah, I had heard. So Bruce Buffer was walking around like he was King Dangalang, and and Steve's dad decides that he's going to go ahead and mess with him a little bit. Well, he walks up with Steve's girlfriend at the time, and how did it go? Did he go up and he asked him for a drink, and then or said that asked him if he was a waiter?
Yeah, I think he did. He did something. Buffer was all pretzeled up in his suit and walking around and stuff. And my dad walks up and was like, "Excuse me, sir, could you get us a couple drinks? So over to this table." Buffer, hey, I'm Bruce Buffer. What are you?
But your dad and he had previously corresponded. He knew who your dad was once he introduced himself, right?
Yeah, they had been talking on the computer, the internet, but they had never seen. Well, obviously my dad had seen him, but he had never seen my dad. So soon as the jig was up there, my dad right away, hey, it's me, Steve Berger.
Yeah, that's great, man. Your dad was awesome at that kind of stuff, man.
Right away. They kind of, yeah. He was a good little prankster for sure. It sucked being on the receiving end of all those jokes. I can remember even when I was a kid, a girl would call the house, "Is little Steve there?" And I'd hear my dad, "Oh, you've seen him in the shower?" All right, give me the phone, Pop. That's enough.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, so we were talking about street fights. There's an interesting one that I did want to bring up just because of I think it's important for guys to know this when they're transferring their skills out there and having to defend themselves. There was Was there one time that you had a guy down, you threw him and you had him in a head and arm, and you had him pinned and it, I mean, you weren't hurting him or nothing like that, but all of a sudden, one of the other guys started to jump in, and you're like, hey, knock it off. I've got the guy. It's not a big deal. And apparently he had a knife out and he was trying to stab you from behind.
Oh yeah, boy, that's an old one. I was probably 19 years old or so, and I remember me and doing kid stuff, just dumb stuff. I can't even remember how the fight started, but these guys were quite a bit older than us, and somebody cut somebody off or whatever, and the next thing you know, it's, hey, pull over. And I get out and I start fighting this one guy, and my two buddies weren't really fighters at the time, and they sat back, and his friend sat back, and I head and armed the guy down and had him down. I was kind of punching him and stuff, and all of a sudden I hear my one buddy just like scream, Steve, and he reaches down. I hear some commotion right behind me. He reaches down, and as I look back, I saw this guy with a big old knife trying to stab it into my back, and my buddy had his arm, and so I was like, goosh, and up I went, and we played the old chase the guy around the car, and nobody can ever catch you whenever you're playing a run around the car game, and he got all frustrated, and he stabbed my buddy's tire, and then he took off, so that was that. But yeah, that's the thing about a street fight. You never know. I mean, I could have probably been dead or paralyzed had my buddy not been quick and grab the arm there.
And situational awareness is so important in fighting in general, but now when you've added the component of that X factor of like, okay, weapons, buddies jumping in, all these things, it's stay safe, man. You don't always have to show off. You can get in there and if you are gonna fight, quickly take the guy out and get the fuck out of there. Don't stand around. Don't wait. Don't and don't get yourself hurt. It's not worth it. It's not worth it, and I think that's a good one for young guys out there to hear that and be like, hey, you can be the best fighter in the world, and some asshole with nothing to lose, can do horrible things like that.
Sure.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've had weapons pulled on me and stupid shit from just being a punk kid. Don't go out there and start shit with guys because you really never know. Even the sissiest guys in the world, they're more likely the guys that are going to pull weapons on you. You can start beating their ass and they pull a gun. So, yeah, I told that story yesterday. Why I'm a real reason why I'm married.
Oh, dude, tell that. Yeah, let's hear that.
So right when I started dating my wife, I was about 17 and I was a shithead. I mean, I got in fights all the time. I smoked a lot of weed, all that stupid shit. So I started dating her. She was real Catholic. Her dad is Knights of Columbus, all that stuff. So she starts dating me, and her mom is not happy. So I'm in love with her. I'm married to her now. We just found out we're having our second kid, which is a boy, which I'm thrilled about, by the way.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. I took her to I dropped her off at an NSYNC concert. Her brother. Man. All right, I'll tell I met her brother because he owed me money. Let's say that. And I told him that he wouldn't have to pay me back if he brought her to the house. So I met her and I started dating her, and I took her to an NSYNC concert. She liked NSYNC. So I dropped her off there and I went with her brother.
So you bought your wife, essentially.
Pretty much. Now, I took her and I think one or two friends to an NSYNC concert and dropped her off, and her brother goes down to Del Mar, like the Loop area, and we're walking around, and I'm with him and one of his buddies. So we're walking down the street, and a guy walks up to me. Well, I grew up in North County, so I kind of know when shit's about to happen that's not good. He walks up on me and goes, "Hey, you guys want to buy some heroin?" I was like, "No, I'm good, man. Thank you." He goes, "Want to buy some weed?" I was like, "No, I'm good." He goes, "How about some coke?" And I was like, "Hey, listen, don't." He was just trying to figure out if we had money. Shorter guy, not real big. And I was like, "Don't do it." And he goes, "Don't do what?" I said, "Just don't do it." And I tried getting these guys. They're both from St. Charles. I was like, "Come on, let's go quick." I knew he was getting ready to mug us. So I start walking. The guy jumps in front of me and pulls out a gun. He goes, get on the fucking ground. And I'm like, shut up. I move it out of the way, being a stupid kid. I didn't know any weapon defenses or anything like that. I just knew street fighting. So I kind of push him out of the way and laugh at him and keep walking. He jumps back in front of me, pretty persistent. Get on the motherfucking ground. I was like, hey, fuck you. You're going to pull a trigger. The cops are all right here. And anyway, he starts running his mouth. He goes, I'll whoop your fucking white ass. I'm like, dude, stop. Don't do it. I turn around for some help, and Crystal's brother and one of his friends are on the ground, all their shit out in front of them, that face down. I was like, oh, fuck. So me and the guys start running our mouths at each other, and he goes, I'll fuck you up. And he kept putting his gun in and out of his pants. I guess when cars started driving by, he put the gun in, they pull it back out and put it back to my head. And one of the times he did it, I grabbed the gun that was in his pants, and I hit him as hard as I could with the right straight. He hit his head on they used to have metal around their trash cans because that's what people used to steal their trash cans. Smacked his head on the trash can. I freaked out because I had a gun in my hand and he's knocked out. I threw the gun out in the street. I look up and the biggest motherfucker I've ever seen in my life is running at me with a piece of rebar. Sprint my ass off all the way down to, there's a Shell station right on Skinker. And I'm calling the cops as I'm running for dear life because I was like, I'm going to get my ass killed today. Run down there. I'm like, hey, I don't know where this chick's brother is, but he's back there. This guy is unconscious again on the ground against the trash can. Another guy is running at me. And about the next day, Crystal's brother tells her mom the story, and that's where she kind of turned the corner on me about being such a big shithead that I was. I probably told this story maybe 15 times because it's so elaborate and people just call bullshit immediately. But true story, I got at least 2 witnesses, and the next weekend, a guy that looked exactly like that guy got arrested for shooting a guy and carjacking him. And I still to this day swear it's that guy. And that other guy's dead probably because he got knocked out the previous weekend by a white boy with bleached blonde hair wearing a polo shirt. So that's my fun little street fight story where weapons are involved. So not as awesome as Steve's, but yeah, I'll tell you what, I ain't gonna lie, I was scared to death when it was happening, but it was one of those times you never know when people have a gun. Hindsight 2020, hindsight 2020, I probably should have gave the guy my shit and left, but I was a punk kid with a hot head, and that's where it went. I was 17 years old, so be careful, guys. I could have been the guy the next weekend that got shot and murdered for some Monte Carlo with 20-inch rims that he shot the guy for and then didn't get away with it. Was immediately arrested.
I guess we know now why you taught your daughter to hate black people.
She hates those on her own. That has nothing to do with me. I didn't say he was black, man. You just assumed. That's racist right there.
Yeah. I guess so. I guess I'm racist. I don't know. Are there a bunch of white guys running around mugging people down on the landing? I didn't say fucking like Olympia Village down in Jefferson County fucking, and the dude asked if you wanted any meth. You know, you got to go with context clues right there. Did he say heroin or heron?
I'm not going to answer that.
He said heron, didn't he?
He said heron.
He said heron. There you go, man. Next time somebody with 2 or 3 teeth go, hey, y'all want some meth? And it's down in fucking Jefferson County, then I'll say it's a white guy.
It looked like some boys from the hood shit. They were sitting on a liquor store steps right there. I don't even know if that liquor store is there anymore, but once in a while I drive by and I think about that. But I don't really tell that story too often.
Oh, it's not good, man. You got lucky, man. Lucky.
I got very lucky. It was more luck than absolutely. It was more luck than anything that I wasn't shot dead that day. I mean, I just decided I had to do something because I was a poor kid. I wasn't giving up the $10 I had in my wallet or my shitty Nokia phone I had that I just gotten from my mom. So that wasn't happening. And stupid is what it was.
Now, didn't you tell me you paid that guy $500 to impress the chick that you wanted to make your wife?
See, that's genius right there.
I'm not that smart. You know better than that.
No, but how badass was Steve's friend to be a non-fighter, to not be in that kind of thing, and to step in and dive on that knife to make sure that, like, I mean, like, think about it. How many people you know that claim to be your friends that would have frozen that position and not gotten your back, not been there? And you know, it's why I like hanging out with fighters. It's why I have all my friends are guys at the gym and things like that. Because at a certain point, if you're not willing to get involved or step into a situation like that, you and I don't have enough in common to be friends. And you don't find those people running around in everyday life. It's you find it. If somebody's willing to punch me in the face and have me punch them in the face, and we laugh about it afterwards, and that develops for guys. That develops friendship more than anything else. I haven't. And I know it does happen, but I don't know how many times sparring sessions have turned into guys running out to cars and getting guns and things like that. I can sure as shit tell you a lot of basketball games turn into shootings and things like that. So
True.
something about getting punched in the face makes you an honest, humble person.
In MMA, you see it saves so many people's lives because they were shitheads, and then they found the sport where you get to actually punch people in the face. It makes you go into work. If you had a bad day at work, you come in the next day after you got to beat up somebody, and you're just in a better mood. I mean, as weird as that is, it really is true.
It's the way your brain works too, man. It takes that, and it's just such a release, and you don't, the endorphins are obviously keeping you nice and even going. That's why, when people are experiencing things like depression, man, one of the best things you can do is get outside, go out there, work around, go work, go work out, get your endorphins up, and just the process of going through and learning how to fight and to spar and things like that is such an honest thing. There's no bullshit.
Which brings me to Steve. You've been working with a lot of underprivileged youth lately. What school are you doing that at?
That is Valley Park Elementary. And yeah, unfortunately, I have to call them. Now I just started a new job. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that this upcoming year. It's a shame because we had a real good year last year, and it was real beneficial for the kids, and I got a real kick out of it too. It was just nice seeing those guys. It's good whenever you walk in there, and obviously these kids were the ones who had problems, weren't paying attention in school, and weren't listening, and it's just nice when you walk in, you have the sport that we all love, and you're able to use that sport to get these kids to do the right thing, to listen to their teachers, do their schoolwork, because if they don't, they're going to be doing push-ups and sitting out when everybody else is actually wrestling, learning moves, and having fun. And I tell them, and I tell my son all the time, you're going to learn or you're going to get strong, one or the other. I implement burpees and up downs and push ups and sprints every time I gets in trouble at school or doesn't listen at the house or doesn't do whatever I say. Hell, that kid did 180 up downs this Saturday. In a row.
Man, that's insane. That's like showing up to late practice back in the day when so Steve and I, a lot of us would double back and do the beginner and advanced classes because half the time the advanced class would just be 45 minutes of calisthenics and 15 minutes of whatever, but it wouldn't be whatever. We don't have to go into that, but no, fuck it, I will go into that. So that's not an advanced class. That's strength and conditioning, god damn it. But yeah, we used to have the best way of counting the burpees too, man. Because Rodrigo would turn his back and be like, "Okay, 200 burpees," and then it would go 1, 4, 6, 9, 10. And that's how we all. Yeah, Steve's the one who first started counting like that, 200, and the rest of us, it just dawned on for the rest of us, like, oh, we didn't realize that was an option, and we started doing, but we were doing stupid shit, like it would get regular and advanced class where we would start off and do 30 bear crawls around that big ass gym, and it's like, it's like, if you only have so much time to train to get better, you're there to learn jiu-jitsu and not necessarily get, really good at strength conditioning. That's a whole different class. That's a different way of training or something else different to work on.
That's how we started out class at the Arnold gym, damn it. We would do like a half hour of freaking bear crawls, burpees, up downs, push-ups.
But how many people did you lose that way? I mean, because again, that works for Dan because he doesn't have a very far way to go up and down.
Well, I kill people.
uh, but like it works for the fighters. It works for guys who just want the intensity and stuff like that. But then your average everyday person is like, man, I just kind of wanted to play around and learn a couple of chokes and do an
Right.
arm or two, and so it's the balance of finding a spot for all those people.
I always kept it at 15 to 20 minutes.
Hmm.
He's exaggerating. I always kept it 15 to 20 minutes for my workout, and I had like a set regime that I would always do. And then I ended up kind of pretty much doing away with the workout for till like now we don't even do a warm up type deal, just because there's just too much stuff out there to try and teach in an hour is not enough time, and also I use, instead of doing the warm up, I just put them into drills right away. So we'll drill for the first 15, 20 minutes or so, and get those drills so that they can kind of uh, ingrain those movements that they've learned. And then when we move on to where I show something, we'll go from there. And we always end with situational sparring.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are moving, moving there, and because it's different in the United States when you're running a gym, and um, it's a buyer's market, and if somebody doesn't like what they're, don't like the way the gym's going, they're gonna go down the street to the next guy. So, at the same time, it's a constant challenge to continue to make efficient, smart ways of training without destroying your body or destroying your students' bodies. It's really unfortunate. And I know Steve would back me up on this. My dad is one of those the tragic casualties of just nonsensical training, and not training smart. My dad eventually got his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but now his arms don't work. He can't use his arms. He can't lift his arms up over his head. Can't lift it past his chest. We have to help him put his gi on.
There's a man who's just a wealth of knowledge, not only in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but any fighting art there is. That guy Steve Mankey's been doing fighting for what, 40 years now, some form, maybe
Oh
more
yeah,
than
nah,
that.
yeah, probably about 44 now. Okay, I think he started the martial arts when he was 16, and he was back in his 30s. He was training with Ron Smith, and so he was out there. He's trying to pick up judo. This was prior to having everything one shop stopping like you guys got down in Valley Park at Steve's gym. You'd have to go around to different gyms trying to pick it up. Jay D'Amato's another one of those guys that were out there constantly crossing paths, and that's how I know Jay so well. Is Jay met me as a child, and trying to go from gym to gym and study different arts and train with different people and try to learn what you can. But that's before the money. The only people making money in the martial arts back then were the Taekwondo people. And nowadays, people, it's a business and people run a business. Then you got oh, we don't want people cross training over here, and we got to get our students to do this and that, and so at the end of the day, it's those hardcore fighters that end up losing out on a lot of that, which is one of the things that I think that's been great about your gym is that have been very welcoming to fighters that want to stop by and just good fighters that want to come by and train for a day. If like you let my kids come down there, like Wendy has been coming over and training with the girls over there. Right now, you've got probably the most well developed female program um, in MMA in the area by far. We have JW's got a nice little jiu-jitsu program going with his girls over there, but as far as MMA is concerned, well, I guess we have the Academy of Courage as well with Tanya Evinger too. But again, matching apples for apples, I definitely send. I'm glad I send my kids down to my girl down to your place and not anywhere else. There's a lot of
Let's great.
No, I'm sorry.
I was going to say it's great to have them, and yeah, I'm a big believer. I think that if somebody wants to come in, get a workout, not only is it going to be good for them, it's going to be great for us. One thing is, John, when like think back to when you and I were grappling together all the time, we would have the same grappling match day in, day out because
Mm-hmm.
we got to know each other's styles and moves and what to look out for. So it's always great whenever you get a new body in there, a new person to roll with, and kind of a new set of moves to try and deal with or trump one or the other. So I think when we get people that come in want to work out, I welcome them. I think it's great for them, great for us.
Yeah, and it's another thing that, and obviously your old roommate Mike Rogers does the same thing on the Sunday practice. He's like
Right.
everybody and their brothers up there, and we're all working out together, and that's okay. Because and it's something that everybody's realizing at the end of the day. It's not the Chris Heatherleys, it's not the Alex Whites, it's not the Josh Sampos that are gonna make your gym stay open on day to day. It's Billy who comes in for kids class and mom's hitting Zumba upstairs. That's
Right.
just keeping your gym
Right.
on. So, if you spend all your time developing your fighters, you'll be a very, very rich in spirit and broke in the pocketbook. Whereas is if we share the responsibility of help working together to try to develop guys and not withholding technique, and saying, hey, I got something that might work for you. Check this out, and all working together to bring these fighters up as a community. And as opposed to, again, if we want to, I mean, obviously everybody's getting their own students, and in those cases, it's going to come down to what's closer a lot. People, oh, okay, oh, there's this really cool school that has jujitsu and Zumba and women's self defense, but then there's another school that also seems very good, and it's 5 minutes away. So yeah, they're probably just going to go to the one that's closer.
Right.
And a lot of times because they don't know, or maybe guess what? It just might be a good quality product. You might have two great schools within 20 minutes of each other, and they both have excellent products. So that responsibility of preparing, some of these great fighters that we have out of this area, kind of falls on us as a community. Because if any one person has to develop a guy, again, he's gonna put himself right in the poor boy. It'd be nice if we were all rich, but then we could afford to do. And I'm sure, Steve, if you were a just like had software mogul money or whatever, you'd be teaching for free. You'd be out there,
Training all the
working with
time.
fighters, training all the time. Yeah. So it's not like your life would change. Just you wouldn't have to worry about rent and house notes and child's colleges and all those kind of things you got to have as a responsibility. So that's something that I've always appreciated from you and Mike is how welcoming that you've been to our guys and and uh, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted because Cooper a couple of times tried to get the fight between Wendy and Hannah McNitt from your gym who's 4-0 or 3-0 right now.
I think she's 3-0 right now.
3-0, and Wendy just got her fourth win, so she's 4-0, and they wanted, oh, hey, we could do this for a regional title. I said, listen, Wendy doesn't have anywhere else that she can go and work with girls except for Berger's gym. She loves Stephanie. Her and Stephanie have been friends for a while. She loves training with Ashley, and a couple of the other girls. I haven't met everybody, but then a couple of the other girls down there. And I said, listen, I don't want to take that away from her. And I said, I don't even care if you go ahead and switch it so you put Hannah above Wendy in the rankings. I don't care. It's a social group for her that she has close friends that can understand what it's like to be a woman and train and fight, and I don't want to lose that for her, even for if it's just for 6 weeks.
I think that's smart, and I think it's a good decision by a good coach.
Plus Hannah's
I mean, bottom line is if this was a UFC fight and they were getting paid or whatever, well, yeah, that you'd have to rethink it. But this is an amateur fight, and you're trying to build your fighter, and keeping her. Obviously, I've got a lot of girls now, so keeping everything good and on the right terms and stuff, and getting them working together is going to be excellent for your girl and for my girls. So yeah, I commend you on it.
Plus, I was going to say Hannah's a beast. I don't even know if I would want to have to put 125 male against her, let alone a female. So.
She is a tough girl. She's a very tough girl. I've seen her pretzel up a lot of guys.
Yeah, that's a good wrestling, man. That good wrestling. She's good.
Solid little wrestler and good little jiu-jitsu player too, man. She just picks things up quick.
Mm-hmm.
Tough girl. Tough.
You're getting better by the day.
Yep.
So so you just came off had Stump up in Canada for the first time, going out and venturing out, and unfortunately he didn't have up to his usual expectation of fight, but that's a great experience for him. I mean, he spent his entire career in this area where he had 200 Stump fans cheering for his name. What it was like to walk out there in front of 3-4 times the crowd that he's ever seen. Well, I guess he's fought on he fought on the one of the Fight Hard cards where he was been in front of that 7,000 people, but people chanting for him, and to have that.
I don't even think did Stump fight for Fight Hard?
I don't think so.
Oh,
he fought on Rumble Time.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
he was
okay.
on Rumble Time, which was probably the biggest crowd. But like you just said, they were all cheering for him. And I'll tell you the funniest thing about it is it wasn't Stump didn't show up. I mean, the Stump that's in the practice room, you can't choke him out without putting your hooks in, and like Garcia did. He showed up, and it blew my mind because all day long I thought, wow, what a gamer this kid is. Look at him. He's just ready to go. Every time I ask him how you feeling, oh, I feel good, coach. I'm ready to go. I want to fight. All the way up till it was time for us to walk out there. He was telling me the exact same thing. And he stepped in there, and I was holding that damn banner. And like you just pointed out, here it is. There's a couple thousand people there, and they were all going bananas for Garcia. And Garcia comes in, stomping the mat, and, looks impressive and everything, and runs over to the corner. And I'm holding the banner. I'm behind the banner. Well, I guess Stump was just kind of melting while he was in the cage there. And I kicked myself because I'm famous for giving good preemptive fight speeches. And I just felt, what? As I was talking to him, I gave him a little bit, but I just didn't think that he needed it. I thought the kid was going, and I said, great, go ahead, because he just kept telling me he was ready. I couldn't see him whenever I was holding that friggin' banner, and I pull that thing up. He goes out there, and he looked like a clam. He just didn't fight. And I walked in. I said, what happened, man? And he's like, man, I don't know. I climbed in there, and I just started asking myself, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Blah, blah, blah. And, same thing I was talking about earlier. I've had those questions run through my head. And it just he started tearing himself down. He started making this guy who, don't get me wrong, I think Garcia is a good fighter, but I'll choke that guy out 7 days a week. I mean, he's steroided out, muscled up type guy, and he's got decent wrestling, but Stump's been wrestling for 20 years. This guy may be 5, and his jiu-jitsu just doesn't look very impressive to me. His hands really didn't look very impressive to me. Stump, I can vouch for him, man. He's got solid wrestling. He's got good hands, good kicks, and his jiu-jitsu game is really getting much better. I mean, he's climbing that ladder.
Well, his topside ground and pound, and passing is excellent.
Huh? You broke up. Right, and
yeah.
Right, and he did not perform the way he performs down in that practice room. And like you said too, it's great experience. That was one of the big reasons I wanted to get him out. We had an opportunity last year for him to go to Canada when he first started fighting, and things fell through. He wasn't able to do it. But one thing that Dana always says is get out there. I don't want a guy who's won 10 fights in front of his hometown fans and his hometown crowd. I want a guy who can handle the big pressures. Stump stepped out there. The pressures got him. So, hey, like I said earlier, there's nothing we can do to bring that moment back. But we can go back into the training room, and we can start working mentally and physically to make sure that moment doesn't happen again.
Well, and now he's faced the unknown.
Right.
It's the worst possible thing that could happen has happened, and now it's time to rebuild. And nothing will ever get scarier than that moment. of standing across there going, oh wow, what's going to happen? Why am I doing this? And now it's like, okay, there's no unknown. So that question, why am I doing this, is just going to be better answered for him now in the future. Regardless of wins and losses, that the importance of being able to be psychologically prepared is going to be, it's just he's going to be just better, that much better at that. And that leads into rumors that I've been hearing. It looks like Kevin Engel and Stump are going to be fighting.
Yeah.
Is that a done deal?
It's pretty much, it's all done, but putting the ink on the paper. So it looks, verbally, we've gotten confirmation, and I think I even heard, and I could be wrong, but I think I heard that Ingles already signed, and I told them to email me the contract, and I would get Stump's signature on there. So it's until we get that contract over and read it and go
Nothing's
through
done.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But right now it looks like it's looks, verbally it's all set to go for in a couple weeks here.
Since when did we start
Who's
reading contracts?
yeah.
I don't read yours. Yeah,
Yeah.
sign
The
this.
whose show is who's putting on the fight?
This is at Hollywood Casino. Brian Batten is kind of the go-to guy on it, and I have not met the promoter, but I think his name is Jason Healy. So I have him, but I've been talking
Yeah,
through Brian
it's
Batten, and then Jason Purdy has also been helping doing the technical.
it's cage time, right?
Could be. I don't even know.
Yeah, Cage Time Promotions. They weren't they the ones that put on? Remember that crazy fight that Bethel had, and it was all the blood. He ended up using my gloves for that.
No,
Remember that a couple of years ago? Is that them?
I don't think so. It could be. I thought that was Mike Green's show, wasn't it?
Well, no, Green promoted it with them.
Oh, Green promoted it with him. Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense, and it might have been because I think Batten was in on that. So
Yeah, this is a really big step up to be doing pro shows like that, and to do it in a casino. I hope they don't fuck it up. I mean, I mean the utmost respect. I hope they don't fuck it up because we have good promoters that have experience treating pros very well,
right,
and hopefully, that I mean that they could. I mean, there might have been a better choice to getting there as a promoter. Now, again, if they can do this right and pull it off, man, hell yeah, dude, I'll support them. But and I'm gonna go because I want to see the fight anyway. But
right,
man, I just do not want another venue being turned off by the fucking ham and egger promotions and shit like that. And it's not even fair for me to call them a ham and egger, but like my experience, again, what we got at that venue when I'm just a couple years ago at or was it Two Hearts? That's not a pro level production. When you have to ask me to run out to my car to get gloves for fighters to use, that's not good enough. That's not good enough.
well,
Now again, and not to throw them under the bus, or they could have
right,
really. Kicks the sanctioning body. Fuck them. Then they suck. If they want to go with Kick, fuck them.
yeah. Well,
Kill Stump. Don't sign shit.
I'm hoping that it's a good event, and I'm hoping that they've learned from their previous mistakes. And as far as it goes for Stump and getting a fight, hey, the kid just flopped 2 weeks ago. This popped up, and I was all for it because I'm a big believer in getting a guy back on a horse. Don't let him sit.
Can't let them think too much about it. It's get
Right.
back right in there.
Right. We got him back in the gym now, and he's training. He's pretty pumped up for this. A lot of respect for Kevin Engel. Kevin Engel is a hell of a striker, good fighter, and so is Stump. So we're ready to go in, both guns blazing, and hopefully get Stump back on track.
What I thought, and I was talking to Tony Biondo about this, thought would be a cool story too, is if Stump first fought like Josh Weston, and then he could try to run the whole, like, fought Josh Weston and then fought Kevin Engel, and then he could set up a match with Sella. He could, like, take the whole,
Yeah.
have like a whole Stump versus Team Finney MMA kind of thing. Would have been cool.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been like, yeah. There's Matt Fraser just sent me a message that said, like, the All Valley Karate Tournament. It'd be like Daniel-san versus Cobra Kai.
There you go. Right. Stump-san.
Okay, yeah, well, he's coming up. Kevin Engel is an excellent fighter with 20 pro boxing wins, a ton of kickboxing, been training his ass on his jiu-jitsu, solid MMA. So this is going to be a great fight. Looking forward to it. Again, I'm disappointed, and I will explain my issue with Kick, because I've used him in the past on shows too. But my issue with Kick is when I've got young fighters coming up, and they're getting ready, and guys are running around from these promotions are running them down. They don't care that I saw a kid fight the night before and they're letting him turn around and fight again, but they're chasing him around for his $25. It's like their priorities are all fucked up. It's one thing about sanctioning fees and being properly sanctioned by a body and paying your fees towards that. I understand that. But when you let a kid turn around and fight the night before, and you're like, oh, he can fight again, even though he lost that fight the night before, and then you'll turn around and let him fight again that night, but you care about your $25. It's like your priorities are all fucked up. But yeah, so that was my issue with Kick. Anyway, Steve, you've got to get up pretty early, don't you, man? I think we're gonna have to bring you back on the show for another day. I think there's just a wealth of information that you can just break out to these young fighters and let them know, hey, this is what you need to do. Learn from my experiences and learn from my successes and my failures.
All right, absolutely. Yeah, I think you always learn more from your mistakes than you do your successes. That's for sure.
Oh, that's for sure. And we didn't even get into a lot of the things I wanted to talk about, like even you breaking away and starting your own team, and what that took, the kind of pressure to break out. And again, I'll touch on it just a little bit. Like, I know exactly why you had to go your own way and do something else, and it was that time when you were training for A-class level MMA fights in my basement. You'd drive all the way to North County to box with Jim Howe, and then drive all the way down to Jefferson County, an hour, to come train with some fucking 18-year-old punk in his basement. And we'd go for like 4 hours. I mean, it was great. It was a lot of fun, and we, got some good training in. But I mean, come on, that.
Thank God for you and your dad. Your dad taught me so much, and I know that I trained a ton with you and your dad in the basement, and I believe was that training that allowed me to beat that Pete Spratt whenever we were up there. Because I spent 6 weeks in that basement, with the padded walls, and listening to your dad bark at you and me and Dustin, and we didn't have a huge gym full of guys to train with, but we made the most out of what we had. And
we did the best we could, and I certainly did the best I could for you, and but it was one of those deals, is you deserved better. You deserved better training camps, and it's like, if Steve Berger had Steve Berger and Mike Rogers coaching him, and Steve Berger and Mike Rogers, the fighters, were coached by Steve Berger and Mike Rogers, the coaches, you guys would have been, you would have been amazing. All the, and then that's a whole nother thing that we can get into, and all the lessons you've learned. So we'll do this another night.
Cool.
We got to get you in bed. You got to wake up early. Don't you? Got to get up at 5 a.m. Don't you?
5 a.m. Yeah, comes around quick, but I'm used to no sleep.
I hear you, man. Okay, well, we'll call this a night, and hopefully everybody enjoyed the podcast tonight. I just want to say thanks for listening. Steve's been a great guy for St. Louis MMA, and he's been a great friend, and I didn't even get into the cool shit, like Steve having a giant knot over his head. He's got an ice pack on his eye, and he's still trying to introduce me to a girl, because he just had his fight with Keith Wisniewski. He had one of the most amazing fights that no one's ever going to see, because goddamn Master Bob didn't fucking tape it and have a professional crew in there. the most amazing fight. And Steve, at Denny's hooking me up. That's the kind of man Steve is. He's a good dude. So,
Thanks,
um,
brother. So
I
we're
it's been great talking to you. I wish nothing but the best for your team and your fighters out there. And Stump, good luck, buddy. You got a big fight coming up, and I know you'll bounce back, and we'll all be out there cheering for you.
damn straight.
Okay. Oh, also before we go, there's one. Ah, shit. I feel really bad. We're doing it like this. Okay, Alex White has got a huge fight coming up on Titan. From what I've been hearing, he's been training down at your place, working his ass off. He's been hitting mics a little bit too, man. Everybody says he's looking phenomenal.
Tough kid, man. I mean, the kid just tough as they come, and another kid with maybe not an expert at any one thing, but has that X factor in him, man. I mean,
I was just gonna say that
yeah.
he's like he has that old school mentality of where it's like he won't stop and he'll do his best. And so if you can add that high level technical training to it, which he's slowly getting, I mean, he could really be something. He could really something. So everybody out there, watch Titan, watch Alex White fight, and cheer on your local fighters. Okay.
Alex is a guy that doesn't even watch MMA fights and then just goes out and does it. Is what's really weird. He's I remember hearing stories about him doing illegal stuff in fights just because he didn't know it was illegal because he doesn't watch UFC and shit like that. So Alex is a freak. I've got to grapple with him several times, and he's always a hard guy to do stuff with because he doesn't take baits at all. He's just happy to be on top and holding you down.
Well, and let's be honest too, Alex. I mean, he doesn't know. He literally doesn't know shit. Like, I mean, it's like like again, and I mean, you don't have to sugarcoat it at all. I guarantee you guys throw him around and tap him out and stuff like that. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what he doesn't know yet. So, but he's gonna know it, and because that kid shows up to fight, he shows up to fight, and he will fight. He'll fight you for an hour as hard as he can, going nonstop. And I've seen him out there, like Greg Wilson, one of his first pro fights was a better, like that was his first pro fight. Greg Wilson was a more technically complete fighter, and Alex simply just broke his will and beat him down.
He's
Lost the first round.
Everything. He reminds me a lot of Luke Waltney. Like we're talking about earlier. I mean, does a lot of things wrong, but it works for him. I mean, just very, very strong for his size, for a 160 pounds, 165, whatever he is, kid. He's extremely strong, moves very, very well, and he does. His stuff is getting better. His technique and everything's getting better, but he doesn't know it all just yet. But he can make it work for you. And like I said, I think that's just because that kid has that X factor. Whatever you get, you better have it 100%. Otherwise, he'll get out of it.
Yeah, and it's and he is willing to take a beating. He is willing to get choked half to death to get out of stuff. And again, and he is learning new stuff, and he's constantly learning. He's hungry to learn new stuff too, and he doesn't and like guys who have been in the game for a really long time. That's why we're excited about a guy like him, is because he's so raw and he's so still happy to learn stuff right there. He's like in 5 years he's going to look like a completely different fighter. He's going to be completely reinvented, and he's still going to have that X factor. He's still going to be a great fighter.
Agreed. Yep, absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, we'll call it a night. I just want to say thank you to all the fans out there, and a special thank you to Steve's wife, Carly, who's been very supportive and helpful to that gym, and very supportive for us keeping her husband up so late. All right, St. Louis, MMA Sucks fans, go fuck yourself. We're out.
Thanks, guys.
See you, boss.